Hey, this is RPG First Look. My name is Corey Hickson, and I'm going to be taking my first look at Knave 2nd Edition and giving my thoughts on it. I also received the limited cover earlier a few weeks ago, so I'm excited to dive in and see what the game is all about. I don't really know too much about it or too much about the author Ben Milton, but I have learned a little bit about OSR just from poking around on the internet and seeing what I can learn. So I think this is going to be a pretty good example of what is going on in that space. So let's take a look. First up, we've got the cover. So I like the cover. It's got some nice evocative text. The background has some fantasy stuff happening. Kind of looks like a more artistic style. So that's cool. And first up, it looks like we've got some reference rules. So got some stuff for abilities, checks, combat, item slots, damage. So stuff that I don't know what this is for yet. So I'm going to be coming back to this. So I'm going to leave this for now. And let's take a look at some of the credits. So yeah, Knave 2nd Edition, written by Ben Milton. We have art by Peter Mullen and maps by Kyle Latino, with logos by Tim Hastings and then editing by Julie Milton and Jacob Hurst. So not really any names that I'm personally familiar with, but I'm excited to learn a bit more and see what's going on. Okay, so we have quite a few different things going on in the content. So we've got tables, we passed those. We've got an intro, so go take a look at that. Some tables, duties, rules, looks like. How to create characters, that's going to be interesting. Leveling up, different checks, traveling, counters, spells, alchemy equipment, and then we're diving into some other stuff. So pretty standard set of rules. Looks like we have, how the characters work. We've got character creation, and we have a whole bunch of other stuff, including spell casting. So looks like a lot of the stuff near the end is more for adventures. And I've heard that the tables in this game are kind of one of the bigger features. So I'm excited to check out some of those. Cool. So let's read a little bit about what Knave is. So it's an old school role-playing game. It's supposed to be open-ended, and it helps create a believable other world that players can explore and interact with. So I think one of the parts for OSR is that it's supposed to be more like not like a simulation, but you don't come in with plot armor like other games. Looks like there is some designer commentary at the back of the book. And then, oh yes, the tables. So one of the prominent features is the tables. So the tables are rolling with D100s. I like that. And then you can combine results together. Okay, so a little bit of an introduction that just sort of talks about what's going on and mentions one of the bigger features of the book, which is the tables. So that's cool. But I'm interested in seeing some of the main features of the book here that I want to check out, which is what the characters have and what the GM is supposed to do. So for the GM, you're supposed to create locations to explore, fill out the supporting cast, let the players choose the action, keep the game moving, use common sense, try to be consistent with your rulings, be immersive, reveal the world, signpost. Cool. And change the rules. Okay, so this is pretty standard. I don't really have too much to say here. Like if someone was new, then I think this is helpful. I've played a lot of other games, so this doesn't give me too much that is new for me. I guess some of like the things that stand out to me is fleshing out the supporting cast. The consistent rulings one. Edit the rules is one that is I don't see mentioned too often. And then for the characters, you're supposed to help the game master create and play your character, take initiative, ask questions. Scheme, Fight Dirty, and Prepare to Die. I think the biggest one that would probably be new for people that I play with is the Prepare to Die. Yeah, that's just a different element there. But this all seems nice. I like it when books start with this kind of work. But nothing here that's really new for me. Cool. So let's see what we've got for characters. Let's start figuring out what the characters actually have. So you have 6 ability scores and you're rated from 0 to 10. So you have strength for fighting, dexterity for being a thief, constitution for your health. We've got intelligence for the magic user, wisdom for the ranger, and charisma for the cleric. So this kind of is signposting what the different features are going to be of the characters: fighter, thief, magic user, ranger, and cleric. So that's cool. And then let's see how we actually create the characters. So distribute 3 points between your PC's ability scores. More than 1 point can be placed in the same score. Okay. Or let fate decide by rolling 3d6 with each die adding 1 to the number. So for example, rolling 355 means con is 1 and wisdom is 2. All other abilities have a score of 0. Okay. So you get 3 points and you can assign them between each of these. 3 seems low, I will say. Curious to know more about that. Record your secondary stats. So you start at level 1 with 0 XP. You have 10 plus constitution item slots, and you start with D6 hit points. And then roll or pick 2 careers from the list on the next page. Oh, okay, so you start with a background. You gain those careers items as well as any of the following that you can carry: some coins, some ropes, some torches, any armor pieces, and a quiver of arrows. If the PC has any points in intelligence, they may receive a random spellbook for each point. Okay, so spells. And then your armor is equal to the number of armor pieces, and armor class is so armor pieces plus 11, basically. And then you get to describe your character. So maybe later on, excuse me, we'll do a character creation. So let me get out. I don't have any dice with me. That's fine. I was thinking we could just like roll and see what it would look like, but we'll come back to that. So you could be a bookbinder who gets a sewing kit, glue, quill, and ink, and then maybe a sailor with some beeswax, pulleys, and a spyglass. So that would be 6 items, and then you can choose these to fill out some more stuff. Okay, so let's learn a bit about what the items have going on. So yeah, we get 10 plus constitution item slots. Damage. So when characters take damage, comes off their health. Once their health reaches 0, each point of damage fills an item slot with appropriate wound, from the highest slot to the lowest. And then you drop. Okay, so that's interesting. So the more damaged you are, the less you can carry, which that's curious. It really emphasizes that the game is about collecting loot for the most part. Direct damage can add wounds directly. PCs die when all of their wounds are filled with, or all of their slots are filled with wounds. Creatures without slots die at 0. And then their health returns to maximum each morning. And then if they're in a safe haven, they can also heal a wound. So another interesting facet there. So it sort of has the very typical 1 day to heal kind of thing. I don't particularly like this just because sometimes you play a game where time is more ephemeral. You don't really care how many days have gone by. So this is the first thing that stands out to me where I'm like, oh, maybe I'd change that. But we'll see how this actually looks in the bigger picture. And then for leveling up, you get 1 XP for each coin that you recover. So that's very old school. And then when you level up, you add 1 to 3 different ability scores. Okay, so each level is twice as powerful as level 1. So you started out with 3 points. Each level also allows the player to re-roll their PC's hit point maximum using 1 additional d6. Wait, let me understand this. If the rolled total is not greater than their last maximum, add 1 to the last maximum. Ooh, okay, so if your health is 5 and you roll 2d6 and get another 5, then your max just goes up by 1 to a 6. But if your health is 5 and then you roll a 10, it goes up to 10. So that's cool. I like that. That seems like that would create some nice, there's some parts where you slow down a little bit and some parts where you speed up. There's only 10 levels, so at the same time, the sample size isn't really going to be big enough to make a difference there. So that's kind of cool. I like how that is, because I usually find that rolling for health is something that I'm not a fan of. Okay, and then we have checks. So when a creature attempts something risky, they roll a d20 and add 1 of their ability scores. I like that they don't do the D&D thing of having like 10, 13, whatever number, then you have to translate it. GM should not call for checks for situations that could be solved with critical thinking. Okay. So typically you start at 11 and then you add 5 by default. So a typical check is going to be 16. And then if you were fighting someone, it's 11 plus their armor points. It is possible to have players do all of the rolling by reversing checks that the GM usually makes. So if you want to play where the players are rolling, that is an option. That's interesting. So let's see what we have for this example here. So Goblin trying to strike a PC could add its level to the d20, trying to hit the PC, or the PC could roll and add their armor points to a d20. Okay, so if you just want to have the players roll for everything, you can do that. The GM can do plus or minus 5 bonuses. Okay, so you're going to be looking at 11, 16, or 21 typically. And then those are based off of if they have a related career, clever approach, extra time, the right tools, etc. And then occasionally, you're going to be doing social interactions. Modifiers may be based on the target's disposition. Okay, I'm not too worried about that stuff. Lore checks. So you can recall lore Otherwise, things have to be discovered in game. Okay, and then searching checks. So this is pretty standard. Like you have your checks. So far, like my first impressions, I find the characters quite interesting. Like I want to see how they look. I like that they're very lightweight. Lightweight characters is something that I definitely appreciate. Um, there's a time for games to be heavy and time for games to be light. But this seems like you could have a lot of complexity just with some lighter characters. Okay, and then we've got some rules for traveling. I know that traveling is more important in OSR style games, but I'm not too interested right now to see what's going on for them. Um, we do have weather, which is interesting. But I think I'm just going to skip over this part. Ooh, okay, and then we have a table. This is our first real table, so if you want to make a location, you could do like a food cache in an oasis at a tavern, and it's mysterious. So you can figure out how those go. Personally, I really like this. I think these things take a lot of effort and work, but they have some cool emergent gameplay that can come up. Okay, and so this is interesting. So it says here that when you're delving, time is tracked in 10-minute segments called turns. Turns evoke a sense of time actually does matter. So previously we talked about adventuring days, and I don't really care for those too much. This is a bit more structured. And a typical action takes up one turn. So you can kind of think of that. I am thinking a little bit of Torchbearer, which has turns as well. All of the turns there are more like they can be short, they can be long. The time doesn't really matter. I'm kind of leaning a bit towards that right now, just because that's something I like. But one of the principles for this game is you can change the rules. And then, okay, so looks like we have some random stuff as you're delving. We have some rules for crawling speed, some rules for light, and then some more delving tables, which are cool. Oh my gosh, there's so much here. I like this. Different types of dungeons, 100 different dungeons. A squeezing trap, I like that. Rage gas. Okay. Use the following rules when the PCs come across a random encounter. So this is kind of interesting where I'm I don't like to do a lot of random encounters, so when we talk about this, I'm kind of trying to imagine how I would fit this into a game. But let's see what it has. So, um, in a confined environment, encounters appear that many feet from the characters. Usually, I don't like to think too much about distances, especially since feet aren't my native unit. Surprise. So we have some rules for surprise here. And then some activities and reactions. I like the reactions page. This is fun. I think if I was using this and we were doing random encounters, I would probably roll these in advance, or I'd probably have like, 5 random encounters and I'd put them on index cards. So I like that for this. I'm curious how other people would use it. And that way, if we needed a random encounter, I could just pull one off the top of my um, index cards and then add that in. See what else we have. Combat. Okay, so let's see what happens with combat. Typically, as I understand it, combat is supposed to be like a last resort. So combat is measured in 10-second rounds. Again, I'm not personally too interested in tracking time like that. Each side has an opportunity to act. Decide which side acts first by making a charisma versus charisma check between the side's leaders. Okay, charisma. That's new from D&D, which uses dexterity. When a side acts, all its creatures in any order may move and take one other action. An attack is a check using the attacker's strength for melee attacks or wisdom for ranged attacks. Another interesting divergence from D&D, we're using wisdom for ranged attacks to try and hit the defender's armor class. If you hit, you roll damage. If the attacker's total roll is 21 or higher, they may choose to also succeed at a free maneuver of their choice. If an unmodified 1 is rolled, the weapon breaks. That's, I don't know. That's like probably one of the first things that I would cut. I don't really care for the, oh, your weapon breaks. You can do a maneuver. You can do ranged attacks. You can do sneak attacks. It always hits and deals direct damage. Power attacks. After a successful attack roll, but before rolling damage, PCs can decide to make a melee attack a power attack, which doubles the number of damage dice but breaks the weapon. I like that. You just yeet. You do your final yeet with your weapon and hope you get enough. Hits deal damage equal to a roll of the weapon's damage die. We haven't seen what weapons look like yet. And it's if they're weak, they get direct damage. If they're immune, then they take no damage. That makes sense. And then what do we have here? Modifiers, and then there's a morale test. So I think this is something that we see in OSR. So when an NPC reaches a breaking point, they must test their morale and roll under their morale rating on 2d6. If they roll over it, they rout or surrender. They may re-roll a failed test once per battle if their leader passes a charisma check. So what is... Okay. Breaking points include after losing half their health, after the first casualty, after half their forces are lost, after their leader is killed, and after they are attacked by something they fear. So that's interesting. So battle isn't a kill all sides kind of thing. It's how can you scare people away, which is nice. I feel like a lot of combat in games is just do as much damage as you can until the other side is beaten up, which I really don't like that. So this adds a much more sense of, verisimilitude to battles. We've got some hazards and then we have some spell casting. I'm not too interested in hazard rates now, but spell casting, I'm curious to see how that works. We saw that there was a cleric and a magic user. So a spell book takes up an item slot and contains a single spell. They cannot be created or copied and must be found, so that's cool. It takes one action. Each spellbook can be used once per day, and you can use a number of spellbooks equal to your intelligence. So one intelligence is one spellbook. And then there are 100 spells included on the next page, so that's going to be curious to see. All spells last 10 minutes and have a range of 40 feet. When a spell targets an unwilling creature, they may make a check. On success, the spell's effect is halved. If they succeed by 10 plus, the effect is nullified. Okay, so let's see what these spells. Oh boy, okay. There's a lot. Elemental Wall. Creates a wall of ice or fire, which is intelligence, 40 feet long, 5 feet wide, and 10 feet tall. disassemble, beast form, lock. So let me remember. So when you make a character, do you just randomly, how does that work? Randomly get spells? Or do you start with none? Oh, if a PC has any points in intelligence, they may receive a random spellbook for each point. Interesting. So does that mean that if you just have a point in intelligence, but you're not the magic user, you can still cast spells? I like that. I'm curious to see what the classes look like because generally classes can either be really loose or really rigid, and my hunch is that this game is going to make them more loose, but we'll see. So let's say we rolled a 54. Ooze form. Your body and gear become living slime for intelligence turns. Ooh. I do like this. This is nice because these spells are all easily understood. They're not difficult. They're just, you read it and you know what it does. That makes a big difference. And then we've got some rules for generating new spells, which is cool. There's a whole bunch of wizard names. I'm definitely seeing that like the tables are kind of the big part of this game. Okay, and then right, so you choose one of these and then you fill out or fill in the blank like a Mad Lib. So let's do 4. So quality element form. The primordial, nauseating, no, quality element form. Primordial, quicksilver, chain. That sounds cool. Could use that to bind people up or something. I do like how this adds a lot of variety. So whenever you want, you can be like, let's roll for a magic spell and see what your new spell is. Ooh, excuse me. So relic magic. Patrons are powerful magic beings who grant some of their powers to the characters through their relics. Give them goals, personalities, mannerisms. Relics are magical items that are bound to the service of a particular patron. Okay. They take up at least one item slot. And what do they do? So when a character finds a relic, they will receive a mission. If they complete that mission, they will get that blessing. It should be something small but useful and can be cast multiple times per day. Okay. The blessing continues as long as the character possesses the relic and remains in their favor. They can have a number of blessings active at one time equal to the charisma modifier. So if you're a charisma person, you probably want to, do this. And if you take actions that are contrary, then you can lose it. I like this art. I like how soft and fuzzy this beholder looks. So this is interesting. This is kind of one of the parts of the game where I'm on the fence about because it makes you you have an implied setting, which is nice, but sometimes you don't want that. And you're sort of, if you go down this route, you're picking a certain story path that you have to do. Whereas, if you're just like a thief or a fighter, you don't have that same requirement. So this is interesting. Probably the thing that I think I like the other spell casting more. It does have some implied setting because there's a bunch of magical effects, so it means we're doing high fantasy, but you're not going on quests and stuff like that. Okay, and then there's alchemy. So what's this about? Potions allow the drinker to produce a significant magical effect. Okay. A drop of the potion gives a clue, so that's how you can identify it. You can brew some stuff. And then there's some intelligence checks you do. And you have to do some magical harvesting. Okay. That seems pretty straightforward. Um, Another intelligence-based thing. And then there's a whole bunch of equipment. Anything? Okay, so we do want to see what the weapons look like. So there's melee weapons. A one-handed weapon is a d6 damage. A two-handed weapon is d8 damage. There's missile weapons. Okay, and then there's your armor pieces. Players can wear up to 7 pieces. Each uses 1 slot and grants 1 armor point. Shield, helmet, gambeson, mail shirt, breastplate, arm plate, leg plate. You can mix and match. Very stylish. And then just a bunch of random items. A lot of random items. Oh my gosh. There's even more. This is nice. One of the things I like about the tables is that there's so much that like this saves you from having to think of words. When you're like searching for, a creative word, it can be like, oh, well, you actually have a stiletto, which you're going to get for a weapon. It's some nice creativity there. Let's see. So we have some buildings. Let me take a look and see how many pages in we are. We're almost about halfway through already. So that's pretty quick. Let me go back into full screen mode here. You So we have some stuff for buildings, warfare. It seems like a lot of the character stuff we're kind of near the end for. Let me go back and take a look here. So yeah, we did all this. So I was kind of expecting there to be a classes section, but it looks like that just doesn't exist. So you're just your stats and your items, which is kind of cool. I like that. That one's nice because it makes the characters feel a lot more equal to each other in some ways. And you can kind of just make whoever you want and then give them the stats that you have. But let's see. So we were at buildings and warfare. So we are going pretty quickly through this. This looks like it's more for downtime stuff, and then warfare. This is like another. These seem more like, modules that you'd add on. Lots of random tables. We have some downtime. So when you do downtime, looks like you have a few different options. You can recruit people. This one's interesting because I find that typically games like this are interested in you having people that you hire and recruit, like lots of hirelings. I tend to not use a lot of that in stories. I prefer if it's just the main characters that are doing stuff. But as the game grows, maybe this is something that people would like. Oh, we got lots of names. So you can really, I like the goals table. Something that seems pretty nice is that the characters are built in, the NPCs are built in a way that lines up with how I like to do NPCs, where it's like, here's who they are, here's a little bit about them, here's a little bit about what they look like, here's their background, and here's what they're trying to do. They have some stuff, they have some liabilities, relationships, mannerisms. So this is quite nice. This is exactly what I would like in a character, in an NPC. And then we have monsters. So monsters only have a few stats to keep track of. I again like that. The less things I have to track for monsters, the better. There's their armor class. So a monster's armor points equal AC minus 11. Okay, I'm gonna need to understand that. Hit points, this is the amount of damage it can be take before death. It can be found by multiplying the monster's level by 4 or by rolling an equal number of d8s. The default ability score a monster adds to checks as its level, or use half. Number of attacks it can perform per round, how fast it can move, how likely a monster is to flee, ranges from 2 to 12, 7 being average, and they have to roll 2d6 under that to stay. And then how many appear. Okay, so let's take a look at the skeleton. So skeleton has AC of 12. They have 4 health. They're level 1. They do a d6. They're kind of slow. Their morale is 12, so they tend to stick around. And then what is NA? Oh, number appearing. They're undead, silent, immune to mental spells and piercing damage, and gleeful. So that's fun. And then we have a bunch of stuff for monsters. Which again, I'm definitely seeing that these tables have a lot of value. Like I would use these pretty heavily. And I feel like it would make the game quite good. So we have a gameplay example here. So I want to see what this does. Because to me, this is like I see how some of the pieces fit together, but I'm also not quite sure. So let's take a look and see what they have going on in here. So you've descended the steps into the tomb complex going north. I'm going to light a torch. You're going to stay near. You see an iron portcullis. What do? They're going to try and lift up the portcullis. You need a lot more leverage or a way to unlock it. And then they examine the room for a little bit. So this is all pretty standard role-playing game stuff so far. Okay, so this is where a mechanic comes in. So in the meantime, Bridget has searched the room. This takes 10 minutes since you have a torch lit and triggers a roll of the hazard die. which is a 4. So I have to go remember what the hazard die is. A dungeon shift. I'll roll in the list I made. An ice cold wind blows towards you through the portcullis, causing your torch to flicker. Bridget, your search discovers that the 4 busts in the wall niches are attached to their plinths, that there is a seam on each of their necks running all the way around. Like their heads can come blah, 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 like their heads can come off. Okay, so this is a puzzle. Okay, and they solve the puzzle by turning the heads. So this hazard die, I want to see what that is because I've already forgotten. Here are hazards. While dungeon delving, time is tracked. At the end of each turn, roll the dungeon hazard die and apply the result. Oh, okay. So this is the thing that I missed earlier. I kind of skimmed over this, but this is obviously an important part. You roll a d6 and then you get one of these. Either you get a free pass, you get a sign that something's about to happen. You can have a shift. Your torches run out. You can become tired or an encounter. So I guess this is how the encounters are supposed to come up. So this is interesting. It's more like there's like almost you're free to go through the dungeon, but the longer you take, the more you're going to be rolling on the hazard die. So that seems to be one of the main engines there. So let's see what the rest of the example is. So they go through the passage and then they want to explore. Okay. I am skimming over these parts where it says like, oops, 60 feet, 40 feet. That does not really, like, I don't think that way. So yeah, that's not like something that's in my mind. So in this one, they roll the hazard die. It's an encounter. Oh my gosh. You get some skeletons. They are 40 feet from you. So it looks like this is interesting because it's rolling on the table as you go, which I would be rolling these in advance for me personally because I want to have a sense of, what's going on when the hazard die goes one way or the other. And then you do highest wisdom. So this person has 3 wisdom. And you have to roll higher than an 11. Okay, and then since they beat them by 5 or more, they're surprised. And then they're going to do an attack. So 15 plus 5 plus 2 strength is 22. They want to do a power attack, so they're going to roll 2d6 instead of 1, and wow, a total of 3 damage. But since they rolled over 20, they get a free maneuver. And then some stuff wraps up, and that's about it. This is nice. I missed the part on the hazard die. Like it's interesting to see how that plays out. I feel like the way the game flows was a little bit different than I expected. Probably wouldn't use the randomness as much as they do here. Okay, and then we have some commentary. So let me see what's left here. Okay, so there's not too much left. Knave began as a hack of basic D&D to streamline everything. It does feel streamlined. I like that. Like this is something that's pretty quick. There's inspiration from Into the Odd, which is a game that I want to check out. I'll probably be looking at that one later. Random tables. I like this. So Ben is saying that the actual content of the game has a bigger effect on the experience than the mechanics, which I would agree. The content is what I'm looking for first. And generally, I like to have a game that is content first, I would say. Some people would say like a narrative first game or whatever you want, but when those things are supported by the game, that's great. What else do we have here? The organization is nice, I would agree. The ability scores are intuitive, I like that. Since the ability scores are added to a d20, they're usually trying to hit a target number of 16. Okay. And then classlessness. So this one was nice. This one kind of surprised me, but I like it. So the players determine their niche based off of what they have in their abilities. So the abilities are linked to typical classes, but they're not there otherwise. And it looks like he's saying here he tried to avoid a dump stat, which is nice. Dump stats are boring. That's probably like the toughest part of having stats is you have one that is not useful. But there is the part of the game where you could have something that's not useful based off of the kind of adventure you're doing. Careers, wounds, hazards. So some of the stuff that I would probably dig into more is learning about traveling, delving, encounters, combat, spell casting. Like those are things I kind of want to look into more. I really like that there's all these inspirations. I'm really impressed with the layout of this game, I would say. Lots of things going on here that are really, this looks like when you're using at the table, it's going to be really effective and useful. We have some stuff on money and gear. Okay, I'm gonna skip over those things. So you have your character sheet, and I love how simple this is. So you have your name, your careers, your... Okay, I need to go remember what is happening here. Your AC and your AP. I don't remember that. You have your abilities, your max HP and your HP. Portrait. I feel like that probably could have been skipped, but whatever. And then you have all your item slots. Oh, interesting. So intelligence is lock picking. The way these scores have been organized is so much different than what I'm used to from D&D, but I like it. It feels very different. Like parts of it that don't make sense to me, like why is initiative attached to charisma? Do I just so strongly associate that with dexterity because of D&D, or what's going on there? Is that a me thing, or is charisma another way that you could think of it? So I'm kind of curious to learn about that. Is that covered in the... not really. Let's see what else. So melee attacks, lifting, climbing, breaking free, that all makes sense. Dodging, sneaking, sleight of hand, that makes sense. This is your health. I do like that lock picking is more intelligence base. That seems interesting to me. To me, lockpicking, it doesn't really associate with an attribute though. So that's probably one thing that I'm thinking of is like, it's nice to have it streamlined, but lockpicking to me is it's a skill. You just learn it and then away you go. Alchemy and spells per day isn't here. I like that if you have 1 point of intelligence, you just get a spell. You can cast 1 spell per day, and that's nice. Ranged attacks, being part of wisdom, that's interesting. Cool. Oh, we got a nice little dungeon. This is cute. And then some hexes. The hexes are probably something that I'm like not doing a whole lot of. Like it looks nice, but I've never done a hex crawl. I think I'd have to play in one to see what's going on. And then we have more of the rules. So I want to figure out, I'm going to look at the rule references and just see, I want to figure out what the armor stuff is because I didn't quite understand armor points. I think that's just the inverse that you do if you're doing the players roll everything method. So let's see. Okay, yeah, so these are still called like classes, but it doesn't actually really, you don't really have a class. You have your checks. Something that I like about this a lot is that you could just print this and the other one double-sided, and that covers like most of the game, and you can just hand it out to your players and they have everything they need. If you can fit your game onto a double-sided piece of paper, that is perfect. We have the attacks. You get the free maneuver. Ranged attacks, sneak attacks, power attacks, damage, morale test, item slots, more rules for damage, spell casting, equipment, that's interesting. I would have to read more about like what these transport options offer. Okay, and let's go read the last reference sheet. Okay, so this is mostly figuring out stuff for the GM or some of the optional or more like less common things, but still useful. So traveling, delving, encounters, downtime, recruiting, all that kind of stuff. Cool. A comprehensive toolkit for GMs who build wide open fantasy worlds. Classless rule set for players who scheme, strategize, and seek adventure, and a love letter to the magic that is old school adventure gaming. Cool. So overall, I do want to, before I figure out my overall thoughts, I just want to understand what those armor points are again. So where is that? Okay. Oh, armor points is just how many things of armor you have. And then your armor class is 11 plus that. Okay. So it's literally just how many pieces of armor you have in your inventory. Cool. I like how much variety there is. Like the thing that I don't enjoy about, for example, D&D compared to this is that the classes are very rigid. So like the classlessness is probably my favorite feature of this. These careers mean that you can be whatever you want and you can just add other ones that you want to be. It's pretty easy. I like that you can be a beekeeper and you still have useful things. You can be a sailor, you can be a singer. Like there's a lot of good stuff in here. Okay, so we're almost at an hour, so let's wrap up. I think this is pretty cool. I would definitely run this. The things that stand out to me is that it's lightweight and streamlined. I think that how it's been streamlined makes the difference between running it and not running it. If this were a game that was pretty clunky, then it would be off my list immediately. The classlessness is really nice. It feels like everyone's kind of on a similar page, whereas, in D&D, you really get pigeonholed based off of which class you pick. So just all the flexibility is really cool to me. What else? So when you do character creation, you can put more than 1 point into the same score, but when you level up, you have to do the different scores. But you still get 3 points, I think. Okay, and then you have to collect quite a bit of treasure. Okay. And then your health is not affected. It's only how well you roll. So that's interesting. Cool. So I do have with me, the other thing that I ordered is I got a copy of one of the popular adventures, The Waking of Willoughby Halls. I thought it was The Haunting, but it's The Waking. Very cute. I think my next thing that I would do is check this out and see what an adventure looks like, because I think from just reading this, I understand and see like the bare minimum, but I think I'd have to like look at an adventure to get the rest of it. And then I'd probably want someone to run a game for me to understand, how they do it. The interesting thing about that is how each person runs their game is going to be different and unique, but I like that. I think my last thought is the layout is super good. The art is nice. This seems like a very useful tool. Even if you're not doing this to run Knave, you could use this for whatever. It's almost like this is the bare bones for a good fantasy role playing game, whatever you're doing. So you can really use this in other spots if you wanted. And yeah, the simplicity of this is really nice. Cool. Okay, so I think that is all my last thoughts. Thanks for tuning in. I This went on to about an hour, which is exactly what I was looking for, so that's awesome. Um, Definitely would play this if you're interested. Please let me know what you think. What are your favorite parts? I'm curious to hear what other people are thinking. And if you have played, I would like to know how did you enjoy it? Because I've not played yet. But I would definitely be interested in trying this game out and seeing how it works. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the rest of your day.